Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Good morning, Patrick. Happy Friday to you. Good morning, Sterling. Thank you for putting in the earnings, Sterling. Amazon was a misbeat, stock down close to 9%. Good morning, Mark. How are you doing? MicroStrategy was a misbeat, stock mostly it's up because Bitcoin bounced. Boy, Bitcoin all the way down to $60,000. Toyota Motors beat stock up 2.41 on what Sterling had to say. Toyota had a double bottom triggered in August 2025, now hitting all three targets. They can take a while, especially the ones on the weekly and monthly basis. So, Reddit, really? It's up. I think it's buy everything Friday. It's buy everything Friday except for oil. And consumer staple oh boy, like the Walmarts and the Costco's, because they're out of favor again because it's buy everything, especially AI. Good morning, Royal Palms. Good morning, Zello. Good morning, OD Green. Good morning, Jake. The devil's lettuce. Oh boy. It's a Friday. The devil's lettuce. Canopy growth. Stock up 1.81. Good morning, Heinrich. Uh, good morning, Yogi. Good morning, David. Philip Morris beat miss stock down 2.64%. Good morning, Daniel. Trend down or new range? Well, we will find out, won't we? Good morning, Ted. Good morning, Eric. It's important to say good morning to everybody. Uh, good morning, Jacob. All right. Remember, no non-farm payrolls this morning because of the short little government shutdown. That's next Wednesday. We have consumer sentiment and inflation expectations of preliminary numbers for February at 10 a.m. We have Jefferson speaking at noon, and we have rig counts. So, yeah, there you go. On Reddit we can just remind me. Right now we have Amazon, Google, Meta, Apple sort of flat, but then I think we're going to get a strong bounce in software now. Including Microsoft is good for, in my book, is good for a potential trade with a tight stop, a bounce trade. Other than that, consumer defensive, shying away from today. You got buy it all. We'll see what Google does. We will see what Google does. Google big gap down yesterday and strong reversal after their earnings. Technology, basic materials, financial, and industrials leading. Only thing that's lagging are consumer cyclical, defensive, and comm services, but comm services might bounce after the open. 83% for the pause in March. Fear and greed mode. See, you can't tell me this sell off was extreme fear. Come on, this was extreme fear. But stock price strength is extreme greed. Model, they've messed up their model now. We'll see if it still holds for overbought, oversold conditions, but there's something quirky going on. 39 drop below 40. So buy it all. Shove it in your long-term accounts because the market's cheap. That's sarcasm. Sterling put in everything important this morning, but there wasn't much. There wasn't much this market moving. Going to be watching how Amazon reacts after the open. So, good morning, Anissa. How are you? All right. We have officially, doubt it will trigger today. We'll have to see, but this was a double top pattern on the weekly basis. Still qualified on the weekly basis. It's confirmed. Spiking just below the weekly rotation zone and now back above it. So that's still critical. If we do roll over, I'm paying attention to 68.1450 on today's close. Other than that, we have the really nice bounce. What? Just dipping below the 50% harmonic, dipping below this key low from middle of December, and bouncing. With the European Open, strong buying, and that's generally when you see it if we're going to bounce. Coming up to 68.70, which is my key level going into the Open, And I'm paying attention to the 4-hour rotation zone. If we rally through 68.70, I'm looking closer to about 68.88 to 68.92 as the next level. Above there, you have 69.13. On a pullback, though, if we get some selling pressure, this is what I'm looking at. Let's drop to the 1 hour. I'm really paying attention to this 50% harmonic area. We have these candle bodies here. We have prior resistance becoming support here right at the 50%. So 68.10. A minor pullback, I'm watching 68.40. A bigger pullback, I'm watching 68.10. So that's what we have there. That's what I'm looking at there. NASDAQ. NASDAQ still technically close below 62.5, almost down to the 87.5 rule, but filled the gap, filled the old gapper. So nearly the 87.5 rules checked off to me. What I'm looking at now is about 24,875 area into the open. We get through there 25,030 on a more 25,030 to about 25,065 on a more substantial rally than 25,145. On the pullback, again, I'm looking at minor. I'm watching around this 24,715 area. More significant, I'm looking right around this 24,555 area. By the way, if we close back below on this rally, if we close back below the 62.5 retracements, then I'm looking for a retest of yesterday's lows. But if we continue to bounce into next week, we have the first cross rotation zone, the hooking over 50, so that 25,145 level becomes major for next week. Good morning, Tony. The Dow retested at 50 and bouncing. Dow still caught in consolidation. Dow key resistance right now is about 49,385 area. Above there, you have 49,600. Same thing. If you want to watch, if it does pull back in the open, just look at, again, I'm watching the 49,150 area, and then on a bigger pullback, 49K. That's exactly what I'm doing. Russell officially hit the second target of the head and shoulders and bouncing. So right now, I'm not going to repeat this again. 50% retracement. Watch that one. But the Russell keeps rallying 2637, 2638 area, and then 2662 area are key. The VIX, paying close attention to this in the open. We, again, for volatility plays, I keep telling especially on stuff like yesterday, take something off if you are hedging with volatility, and you can still leave something back on. Are we completely out of the woods yet on all these things? No. They've now broken, a lot of it's broken below key support. So let's say we get the volatility crushed back down to, especially closer to the rising trend line, I'd be looking to reestablish some volatility hedges on what was taken off. There's your Daxi. No, this is not a double bottom. Again, on rallies on this, I'm still watching for rollover plays. We came back down finally to the 50% harmonic again. I'm still looking closer to the 200 into between this 50 and 62.5 levels. All right. But on a rally now, major resistance is just above 24,960. The yields yesterday confirming the double. But again, this was not adjustment in inflation. This was a flight to safety. A flight to safety. Now, I've done some research on that. Generally, when you have a sell-off and it triggers this, and then we get a bounce pattern Like in the equities, these turn into lower probability doubles because it was not driven by, shall we say, natural forces. It was driven by panic forces. However, I'm still waiting to see if it does trigger. If it does trigger below, that would need to be on a close below 4.199, and then I'd be very patient. Crude pulling back again with the Iran talks. Again, from just a purely technical perspective, still looking for potential buying opportunities unless we trigger this double top. Then I'll be patient. Other than that, we're trading right at a very key. Just above 62 is very key, so I'm paying attention to that on today's close. Good morning, holy holy. All right, gold. I'm going to review this too. Still, wanted to review a couple things here. So, we have still not invalidated the percent beat buy. We pulled back very nicely, spiking down to 62.5 and between the 50 and 62.5 and setting up another percent beat buy bar. So, on a 4-hour basis, that is actually triggered. Still, the same thing holds true. Okay? Now, in the short term, guess what level's critical for me? 46.82 on a closing basis. We close back below there. I guess you could figure out what some short-term stops would be from my perspective. And on the rally, gold still has to get above 51.75 to trigger the probability shift. It's already sold off once between the 50 and the 62.5. So this isn't something that's just buy and hold. This is the secondary reaction play, which is aggressive until you get above the 62.5. Just showing you things that I'm looking at. And it's not just for gold. That's the way I like to play secondary reactions. Okay? Silver, on the other hand, remember, never triggered a percent B buy. We did have a potential double bottom. I said yesterday with the potential double bottom, that was the only thing that could get me short-term bullish. Then we sold off overnight and hit the next minor harmonic. Still between the 50 and the 62.5. See the blue lines still between there. So key on a closing basis is 62.88. All right, but silver's got to do a lot more heavy lifting because this is not following through at all right now. And now we have the first cross the rotation zone above it. Does it mean it can't be played? It didn't even trigger a percent beat buy on this time frame. Silver's acting really weak, so it's got to really prove itself before I'm touching it at all. All right, maybe going into next a Sunday night, Monday, you can pay attention for a scalpy thing on silver with a daily percent beat buy. But my first target would be the first cross the daily rotation zone. So there we go. Dollar index finally taking a breather. A little breather here on the dollar index. I gotta update these. Let me flip this around. I forgot to flip that. Sorry about that. But right up just above the 50% harmonic. Not surprised to see a pullback here. Actually closing above a key resistance level, but not surprising to see a pullback. So what am I looking at now? If we start close above the daily rotation zone, I'm looking at 97 for support. I mean the 4-hour rotation zone. Euro holding key support right here. This is a horribly sloppy daily double bottom. It does not qualify on any other time frame. It's too messed up. But I'm paying attention to Wednesday's high in that. Let me look at Bitcoin because we're finally getting the bounce there. By the way, this is close enough. When you have a huge round number to technically first target, but remember on these head and shoulders, since you're trying to line up a point with a neckline, like depending on where I lined it up, it's an area, especially when you get that close, because I'm trying to line this up with a rising neckline. It's not an exact science like the doubles. Before I think it was 59.5. Now it's 59.3. You know what? 60K was my key level. And we actually got down on the Coinbase platform to $60,000 and won. So guess what? It's raise a stop or lower a stop. It's a short. Shouldn't say raise a stop. But when you have those really key numbers right in front of a key thing, don't be silly. Now we have still the decline rotation zone. Just as a bounce play, it is very oversold. Could it bounce all the way back to the neckline? Sure, over the next while. But I'm still going to be looking at the daily basis, especially closer to this 71, 72K, 73K for a potential rollover play. There might be a percent be buy setting up possibly for tomorrow, depending on how this bar is. But let's see. Could Bitcoin still go lower? Well, it's coming in with that weekly 200 area and that 60K and prior support. It pierced through this level, and this is a major level. So not surprised to see a bounce, but if it breaks this, if we turn back down and break this 58 level, watch out. And if you close below 57K, it shifts the probabilities. Just wanted to point that out. Spiders, you're gapping up today. Key thing for me on a pullback, 680.94 is yesterday's open. If you go through there, the gap fill is to 677.62. On a stronger rally, you look at yesterday's high, 683.69, and then through that, going into next week, you have a gap fill to 686.19. First cross rotation zone there also. So for any bigger play, also still technically in the spiders, yesterday's high is very key. Why? Percent B buy bar. The challenge with this is you have the hooking over 50, which was very key support, turning into resistance and the first cross the rotation zone. So you have to raise stops, in my opinion, pretty aggressively. The Qs also gap up today. Yesterday's open 621, so pay attention to that on a pullback. If it gets bigger selling, your gap fill is to 597.03. Would also be a percent B buy bar, so pay attention to yesterday's high at 604.81, and you have a gap fill right above that at 605.75. IWM, we got through the first and second targets on that too and stopped dead at the 50 EMA. All right. So, gap up. There is a percent B buy bar above yesterday's high. That's a long way off. To fill the gap to yesterday's open is to 258.50. To yesterday's close is 255.83. Yesterday's high, which is key, 261.62. All right. Sterling's putting in a lot of stuff in here. Let's look at TM first. Toyota Motors. Toyota Motors was your massive double. That finally is played out. Also, all the way up to 87.5. So, pay attention to that. What else has you got in here, Sterling? Reddit triggered a weekly double top that may be bouncing to the candle bar. RDDT. Triggered a weekly. How much is, yes, P to E of. Just looking here. All right. It has triggered a massive double top. There you go, mate. Yeah, this again, this could be a long term. Look where the targets land at the bottom. Would I be shocked to see it hit the April of 20 last year's lows at some point over the next few months? No, I would not. But this could be structured as a long term play. Thank you, Sterling. CBOE has a well formed potential daily double top that is trading after earnings. Let's see. CBOE. CBOE does have a well formed potential double top, and you got the wording exactly right, Sterling. Potential double top. Sterling, I think, has mastered this stuff. So, doesn't look like it may, we need a pretty decent sell off to trigger, but that's one to watch for. That could easily also take it back to a 200 day. Very interesting there. Thank you, Sterling, for that one. Philip Morris, what do you have going on there? Has a massive potential weekly double top that is a long way to go. Trigger, but if the risk appetite returns with a vengeance, it may. A weekly. It does have a weekly double top. Look at that. Look at it on the Sterling. Look at it on the monthly. Oh my goodness, that's a thing of beauty. That is a thing of beauty. It's a beaut. Wow. Because that would be out of the way of the monthly rotation zone. That's one to watch for a longer term. Would not be setting up shorts in that because that may never trigger. It may get invalidated, but that is a beaut. That is. DXY weekly is a percent B. Yes, it is. That's why I think I wrote in the newsletter last week that to watch for those who aren't subscribing to the Unfiltered Investor. I did write that last week. Watch last week's high for follow through and then a follow through close above it, which we're getting. I mean, unless there's a disaster today, even on a pullback, should trigger. So that could be a really nice reversal pattern also for longer term. However, the stop on this is below the low, technically. So it does not invalidate that pattern. Now, would I wait all that way on a dollar trade? No, I wouldn't, but that's the technical invalidation point. Very good, Daniel. Oh, you guys have learned so much. I really. Palantir has triggered daily. Yes, it has, but probably will trigger on the weekly today. Let's again the weekly. Would I be super bullish? No, these are bounce plays in here. I mean, I'm watching for rollover plays in things like this. Again, triggered. This could bounce. This could bounce all the way back to the rotation zone in the breakdown area from the. This could bounce to 155 even without any technical damage. But look at this hooking over 50. Look at this rotation zone. So that's the weekly. The daily, even on a bounce, look at the daily rotation zone to the prior breakdown area, 146, 147. Oof. I would not want to be long some of these things long term right now. For anyone who doesn't trade Bitcoin, there's some ETFs. ETFs, you can trade them. Or you can always trade the futures. The only thing I don't like about the futures is you still have to do your analysis. If you're trading the Bitcoin futures and they're on the CME, that's fine. The challenge is if something happens on the weekend, you have to hedge with actual Bitcoin, and so you still need a some kind of account, and don't do your analysis on the futures. Do it on the cash. Please do it on the cash for that one. Could have a weekly close below support on XBI. Let's take a look. Yes, you could. Well, this is losing. Look at this. I have to update this chart. Haven't updated this in a long time. Haven't updated XBI in a long time. But there's your daily. Losing all kinds of daily support. Getting a bounce today. But unless this holds, we could be setting a bigger, at least to retest the bottom of the rotation zone on the weekly basis over the next little bit. Look at that selling pressure. Look at the selling pressure on XBI on your biotech. So, yeah, technically, if you closed above yesterday's high, it would be a % beat buy, but it would be really scalpy. Coin is most likely going to close below the 62.5 retracement to the all-time low on the weekly. From the all-time low, it is. So again, coin, for me, bounce plays are setting up stuff for shorts. Now, would not be surprised to see a bounce here against very key, especially with the bounce in Bitcoin. Again, I guess if it closed on a weekly basis above last week's high, it is a % beat buy. It is very oversold. Again, we're going to see some things bounce. Here's another thing I'm watching with Microsoft. Okay, it has closed below the 62.5 and not yet. I'm looking at this for a bounce play only. Some of these software things for bounce plays only. If it triggers something, don't have a strong trigger yet, and that's for a scalp. That's aggressive scalpy. We'll be looking for still rollover plays in these two. But there could be some interesting bounce plays in that. All right. NVIDIA triggered yesterday also. Again, NVIDIA. Messed that up. Here's your daily. It triggered on the daily. I was looking for a weekly trigger because it's technically better weekly pattern. It's confirmed on the weekly. We'll have to see if it triggers today on the weekly basis. If it triggers today on the weekly basis, that's going to be very interesting. It's right there. Have a great weekend, Mark. That's where we sit. Yes, excellent work to Sterling. Big shout out again to Sterling from Yogi. Yogi Trades. The weekly sell volume on PayPal is massive. Yes, this is something I'm looking at. If I could type the symbol in. This is the one I'm looking at. This I'm looking at for a longer term play. This has to have a wider stop. We're coming into very key support area right here. Look at this is your all-time lows. You're trading with a PE of below 8. Like this thing's going on. Somebody would acquire this before it disappears. Okay, so I am looking, again, this is long term. Because again, my stop would be below 29 on this. Okay, but for long term, I am interested in PayPal. There's your monthly chart. There's your weekly chart. And the volume. Look at that volume. There you go. Look, it's right by. The volume is massive. This looks like a pretty strong potential blow off bottom. But the only way I'm looking at this is for a longer term thing. Yes, you might get a bounce in here. Yes, you might get some % beat buys. But for me, PayPal's a much longer term play. Look at that vertical up, vertical down, massive double top pattern. Close below 62.5, and then all the way down. With that, I don't think there's much else. We got the, by the way, the Broadcom, which triggered its horizontal and hit the 50. Still looking, we'll be still looking for rollover plays in Broadcom. Not surprised, and bouncing off the daily 200. Not surprising to see. But keep an eye, Broadcom, even if you don't trade or anything, if we start closing back below the daily 200, it could get bloody in here. Exactly. Well, book value I don't pay attention to for something like PayPal because it's going to be distorted and it's not really a manufacturing or brick and mortar type of business. But it could be acquired just for the user base and everything else if it gets cheap enough. It is a riskier play. I would not be throwing a ton of money in it, but if you were looking at some things that you might want to, hey, throw a little fun money at it to see what happens longer term, that could be an interesting one. Again, it is riskier. It's not like going into some key dividend stocks that have a great dividend yield that, okay, if they get beat up a bit, you're still collecting the dividend. That's not the kind of play PayPal is. That's a riskier one. With that, I hope, again, everybody's learning something. Really watch this gold stuff. This is, if you want to learn secondary reactions, again, we don't know how it's going to play out. This is one we're going through real time. This is a really good example of a secondary reaction to learn how I play them real time. Okay? You're welcome, Anissa. Everyone, have a fantastic... Oh, the Olympics? Well, they're already starting. I was watching some mixed curling last night. Mixed curling Phoenix Open going on this week, going on. But so we'll see. You know. So I had that in the background all yesterday. So let's see. There's lots of fun things. Ivy ring on PayPal isn't as high as I thought it would be at 36.50 implied volatility. Thank you for throwing in there. All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Oh, Super Bowl! How could I forget? Super Bowl Sunday this weekend. We'll find out Monday who won. It's in a secondary bounce, but it has, remember, I went through, silver has not triggered any patterns. Yesterday I said the only thing I could look at was the double bottom. I will watch for Sunday night in the futures for a percent beat buy for a bounce play only. Silver's got some heavy friggin' lifting to do. And by the way, if we start selling off again, silver, I think we could see $50 easily again. 50 easily. Because look at this. This has wiped everybody in since the end of December. If you got in there, you're back to break even. If you got in after that, you're a loser now. This is why you got to be careful of these moves. That's why I hate them. Because if you're trying to get in these things and chasing it to the top, yeah, you could, oh, look, whole month I'm making money. Boop, goodbye. Verticals are not sustainable moves. But there we go. That's enough of me. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bye for now.